Nobody warned me that suffering could imitate truth. Nobody told me that grief could borrow the language of certainty, or that fear, if given enough lonely nights and enough unanswered questions, could learn to speak with such confidence that I would almost mistake it for my own voice. And perhaps that was one of the cruelest discoveries of all, for pain does not merely wound the heart. Given enough time, it begins to narrate, and if we are wary enough, we begin to listen. But somewhere in the middle of that battle, I stumbled upon something so simple and yet so strangely powerful that it changed the way I listened to my thoughts forever. And if you remain with me until the end, I will share it with you. For there are reasons of sorrow and strange nights of trembling when the mind, exhausted from carrying it more than it ever was meant to carry alone, begins to speak in a language that sounds like wisdom, but is born from fear. And in those hours, thoughts do not arrive gently. They arrive with authority. They speak as though they have seen the future. They make promises they have no power to keep, and perhaps you know their voices. Nothing is ever going to get better. You've already missed your chance. You are too broken now, too tired to begin again. And because the heart is hurting, these thoughts do not feel like passing visitors. They feel like truth itself. Yet suffering has always possessed this strange talent for making temporary winters feel eternal. And I learned, after much wrestling and many sleepless nights, that pain is a poor prophet. Despair speaks with confidence, but confidence and truth have never been the same thing. And so I stopped treating every dark thought as though it deserved a trial, for fear has an endless appetite, and it will gladly argue until dawn if you insist upon defending yourself against every accusation it brings. Instead, with what little strength remains in me, I began to return quietly and stubbornly to the things suffering has made difficult to remember. I reminded myself that a wounded mind, no matter how frightening its voice may sound, has never been given the authority to decide the meaning of my life. And though I could not always feel God's presence, I refused to make His silence for His absence, for He had carried me through many valleys for me to believe that He had chosen this moment to let go of my hand. So I learned to speak to my weary soul as one speaks to a frightened child awakened by the nightmare, not with anger and not with shame, but with the kind of patience that love requires. I would say, dear soul, this darkness is not the whole story. You have been afraid before, and yet here you are. You have stood in the winter before, and spring did not forget your name. Morning has always found its way back to you. And little by little, not all at once, and not without tears, I discovered that fear was no longer the only voice I could hear. For thoughts are strange things. They may knock at the door, but they do not need to be invited to sit at the table. They may speak loudly, but volume has never been proof of wisdom. And though fear can repeat itself 1,000 times, truth possesses a patience that fear does not understand. Which brings me to the little secret I promised you. And I confess, when I first discovered it, it almost felt foolish, because for so long I believed that repetition belonged to fear. I thought anxiety alone possessed the power to speak the same lie over and over until the heart surrendered. But one day, exhausted from trying to out-argue every terrible thought, I asked myself a question that changed something inside me. Is fear allowed to repeat itself? Why shouldn't truth? Why should despair be permitted to rehearse its sorrows while hope remains silent? Why should anxiety speak 1,000 times while faith is expected to whisper only once? And so I made myself a simple rule. When fear repeated something 3 times, I answered it with 3 truths. If fear whispered, "Nothing will ever change," I answered, "I have survived difficult seasons before. I do not know what tomorrow holds, and neither does fear. And God has not abandoned me." If despair told me, "You are too broken now," I answered, "Wounded is not the same thing as ruined. Healing has never demanded perfection, and I do not carry this burden alone." And so I continued, not with the expectation that one evening of faithful words would suddenly silence every shadow that had learned to dwell within me, but with the quiet understanding that the heart, much like a garden weathered by many storms, rarely remembers the warmth of spring all at once. And though there were nights when the old fears returned wearing familiar faces, and morning when despair once again attempted to convince me that it always has been telling the truth, I simply returned patiently and without accusation to the things I had chosen to believe. Not because I wished to deceive myself, nor because I had become blind to suffering, but because I had grown weary of granting fear an authority it never rightfully possessed, and I could no longer bear the thought of allowing the darkest voice in the room to speak as though it had alone been trusted with the truth. And so the days has passed. I found myself returning to these small and stubborn truths with faithfulness of a traveler following a lantern through the fog. Not because the mist has vanished, and not because the road had suddenly become clear, but because I had walked long enough in the darkness to know that one needs not see the whole journey in order to trust the light that has been given for the next step. And though fear has still visited me from time to time, as old ghosts are known to do, I discovered that it no longer sounded quite so much like home. For the words I had once spoken with trembling lips, scarcely believing them myself, had quietly taken root somewhere deep within me, and in the places where despair had once spoken without interruption, another voice has begun to emerge, gentler, older, and infinitely more patient. Not so much louder or more dramatic, but more like steadier. Like the first pale light appearing at the edge of the horizon after a long night, asking for nothing to be noticed. And perhaps this is the mystery of healing that no one has ever told me about. Perhaps that healing is not always the triumphant banishment of fear, not the miracle of never trembling again, but the sacred and patient work of teaching the soul again and again where it belongs whenever it loses its way. For perhaps healing has never been the absence of storms, nor the forgetting of sorrow, but the slow and sacred remembering of what suffering tried so very hard to make us forget. And perhaps that is why hope survives, not because it shouts louder than despair, but because it waits with a patience that fear has never understood, until one day, almost without noticing, the very heart that once wandered among frightening things became to recognize once more the sound of home. Take care, my sweet, gentle soul. Until the next one.